could look at the trees, but nothing would let me get it out there. It was as if something doesn't want you guys to know this. But I'm sorry, I have a story and I have to say this, and I am going to tag Hawk in it. Because I just watched a short he put up where this poor, sweet human has lost their parents to the Republican Party. They are no longer the beautiful paramedic that they were, the person that would help anyone and do anything to make someone's suffering be better. My name is Martha, and I am the daughter of Carol. My mom is a nurse for 40 years. And although nurses and paramedics have their quibbles, because one always thinks that they know more than the other one does, the fact of the matter is, paramedics know triage and nurses know bedside nursing, and when their superpowers come together, they make a super team. It's an amazing thing. Another thing you need to know about me is that I am clairvoyant, and I can heavily feel my mom right now. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because at the time that my story happened with my mom, I didn't know this. I just knew that I could tell when the phone would ring. Before the phone would ring, I could tell when people were going to stop over. And she could do the same thing, but we just didn't think anything of it. And it's only now in the past month that I have realized, I've been thinking about this story, this thing that happened with my mom, and realizing what happened. So this is for that gentleman. This is what happened to your dad. This is what happened to everyone's parents. And I'm so sorry that it did. I'm 53, okay? I was born in 1972. My mom was born in 1943. And in the 90s, you know, things were changing. You know, the 80s were the first decade after Vietnam where no one went to war. Okay? Remember that. Because they want us to forget our history. That's why up north on Lake Ontario, where I live, we learn about the Underground Railroad. We know where the secret ones are that no one knows about. Shh, do not say a word. We know it'll happen. Anyway, so we know our history. So it's the 90s. We're living in Syracuse. I'm not living in Oswego yet. And my mom starts listening to Rush Limbaugh. And I'm in the car with her, and, we're going to and from work, and this, that, and the other thing. Oh, this is Ernie, and that's Douglas. Douglas is deaf. Ernie hears everything. Everything. And if you see a kitty, that's Oscar Joseph. Well, actually, his whole name is Oscar Mayer de Legato. This is Ernesto Diego Hudson Rivera. And that's Douglas Arthur Nibbler Noel Adams. Yes, he does carry a towel with him as much as he possibly can. Anyway, I digress. So it's the 90s. And so I start, my mom is, see, you've got to remember, okay? Remember, my mom was born in 43. My mom listened to AM radio. We didn't. If you were born in 72, you were FM, baby. Why would we want to listen to AM? My God. I'm autistic, so maybe for me it just sounded differently. But it just sounded different. It wasn't the same, right? So, and we didn't want to listen to our parents' music. So why would we listen to AM? So remember, because they want us to forget that in the 70s, I remember this talking with a friend about this, there was a massive switch. Doctors no longer had private practice in their homes or in like little offices off to the side. They were starting to actually have practices in hospitals. And from the hospitals, those practices entered into bigger things, okay? But so they were listening to AM. So by the time my mom is in the 90s, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and she's, in her late 40s, she's listening to AM still. But now AM has turned from music to talk radio. It has turned to Rush Limbaugh. Because remember, these people also listen to old radio shows. So they had no problem turning a radio on and listening to it. They had no problem turning a television on and cleaning while it was on. They didn't have to. Would you remember? Our parents would just turn a TV on, start cleaning and doing something, and never watching the television because they watched, listened to old radios. They listened. So by the 90s with Rush Limbaugh, their music is now changing. You know, Republicans in the 60s switched from Republican to Democrat and Democrat to Republican. So you have this whole switch and this whole thing that, you know, in 30 years is starting to mellow itself out. We know what the Democratic Party is now, and everybody wants Clinton to be president, except Rush Limbaugh. Remember? And I sat there in the car one day with my mom listening to AM radio because I was a lucky girl who got to listen to my radio, my FM radio. And my mom wanted to listen to AM. And so that was what we were going to do. We were fair with each other. I was a single parented, only child, never knew my dad. So we had a way about ourselves, okay? So, and it was great. I loved my mom. She was amazing. I have complaints, but doesn't everyone? I was very lucky. I had a really great mom. I'm very lucky. And I know that. And I am very grateful. But I sat there and I was saying to her, Mommy, Mommy, like, why are you listening to this? It's Rush Limbaugh. He's spewing this hate. I'm like, Mommy, we don't talk about people like that. You raised me. You told me, Martha, we do. Short ADHD story time. Where are you shocked here? I am under 10 years old. I'm probably like 6, 7 maybe. And the KKK, I don't know if any of you remember this because they want us to forget our history, came up from the South into New Jersey and Connecticut. It was big. Do you guys remember that? The KKK coming up through New York and up through New Jersey and into Connecticut. Do you guys remember that? Like, it was giant. There were massive KKK, Ku Klux Klan parades. And I remember looking at my mom and I said, Mommy, why are they doing that? Like, why do they let them do that? That's not right. And of course, you know, I am an AUDHD child. And of course, at the time, we don't know that. We just know I have dyscalculia, and obviously now I have dyslexia because, it's like a wonderful hodgepodge of everything. But she looks at me and she says, Martha, you're right, that's wrong. They should not hate people. But Martha, according to the Constitution, my mother is explaining this to a 6-year-old because she talked to me. We talked. She didn't order me around. She talked to me, hint, hint. And she said, Martha, according to the First Amendment, they have the right to say whatever they want to. They have the right to free speech. But she said, Martha, their free speech ends when their free speech ends when their speech starts to hurt people. That's what she said to me. She said, their free speech ends when they start to hurt people. She said, you don't have free, you can hate whoever you want. You can do what you want. She said, that's the point of the United States of America. People came here to be free. People came here to do what they want, but they had to just follow the rules, boundaries, and limitations. We had these rules. We all agreed as a society that we came here from oppression and we didn't want that oppression here. So we knew even if this white person hated this black person, they had to toe the line. They knew. They knew. And that's what they did. They towed the line. But that changed, didn't it? It changed. And the change was My mom listening to Rush Limbaugh now. It went from that to explaining that to me looking at my mom going, Mommy, you taught me we don't talk about people like that. And it was scary. I was like, what the heck is this? Like, what the hell is this? So then Clinton becomes president. Oh, I think Oscar was meowing. Clinton becomes president, and it is wonderful. And it's amazing because it's new. You know, we'd gone from this era without war, and then we had the 3 month war, and we needed something new because gay people needed rights, trans people needed rights, everybody needed an equality, and the hate that was there from the past needed to leave. It had to go. And that's what the Clinton change was about. That's why everybody voted them in, because we needed that change. We wanted that change, that unity of people being together, and not people being together in that unity where it's kumbaya, because that's not realistic unity. Realistic unity is saying, hey, I don't like you, but hey, yeah, your kid and my kid, birthday party, they're coming over. What does she want? The unicorn thing? Okay, can you text that to me? What did he want? He wanted the football. That's unity. I don't have to like you, but our kids like each other, so we kind of got to get along. Just like war ends when both sides just want to go home and see their kids. They're just tired of the war and they just want to go home and see their family. That's when war ends. It does. When both sides look at the other person and say, I want to go home and see my kids and make love to my spouse. Bye. And you just leave, and then, yeah, I don't like you, you don't like me, but our kids got a school date. They go to the same school, so we kind of got to get along. It's Ireland, Northern Ireland. Just look. That's why they support the Palestinians the way they do. That's what real peace is. Getting along. Even though you have differences of opinion, right? So, I'm sorry I got off there. My mom, so Clinton wins, and Rush Limbaugh starts with day 1 under siege, day 2 under siege, day 3 under siege during the Clinton administration. I think he got to like day, as far as I knew, it was like day 120 or 143. And I looked at my mom and I said, Mommy, what is this? What is this, Mom? Why are you listening to this? I said, Mommy, you taught me this. I'm sorry, Ern. You're not in trouble. You're not in trouble, Pup. Come here, babes. Ernie, you're not in trouble. I'm sorry I yelled. Oh, baby, I forgot. He does not like yelling. Aw, Angel, come on. You want to come up? You're not in trouble. No, he's not. He's not in trouble. You know who's in trouble? Rush Limbaugh's in trouble. Rush Limbaugh's in trouble, huh? Because he's a bad man. Yes, yes. I'm sorry, I won't yell. So because I got like so excited. So I'm like, Mommy, what is this? I said, Mom, you know as well as I do that we don't talk like that and that this is not okay. And now I understand that I am very neurodivergent. So even if I take it aside and be a little less strong, at the end of the day, I'm like, Mom, what are you going to be? Mom, what is it going to take for you to stop listening to this? Is it going to take someone flying a plane into the White House? Realized I said that about 4 weeks ago to her because I've been thinking about this and where did this come from and what groomed our parents into this behavior. And that's when I realized 3 days later, a Cessna hit the White House and my mom stopped listening to Rush Limbaugh. My mom never listened to Rush Limbaugh again. She denounced all Republican activity. She saw immediately what was going on and what they were doing. And she just stopped. And it freaked her out, I think, because now in retrospect, I just look at this and I'm like, I didn't even realize at the time what I was saying. Now, if I were to say something like that, if I were to even have a thought like that, I have a notebook I write it down in, because at the end of the day, any kind of little prediction I might get, that either is or isn't. It's just something up in the ether. It's something that hasn't been done. It's something that hasn't been planned. But when it comes out of my mouth the way it did with my mom, that would be something I would pay attention to. That would not only get written down, that would get stars and asterisks. Confirmation kitty cry. Exactly. Exactly. And it was terrifying. I sit here and I think about that, and I think, if my mom hadn't listened to me, had she just said, that was some crazy person, they're just crazy, because that was one of the things I had said to her. I said, Mom, you and I know that he's stupid, that Rush Limbaugh is stupid. You and I, Mommy, you and I understand that Rush Limbaugh is dumb and we should not take him seriously. But I said, there are people out there that are mentally unstable, and they do not understand he's full of crap, and they believe him. And what proof do we have of that? Nancy Pelosi's husband. How many Trump supporters, hi kitten, how many Trump supporters run around going, he's just full of it. That's not true. That guy's crazy. But that's the thing. That's the point in the United States of America. You have to watch what you say, because it's not that you don't have the freedom of speech. It's you got to think before you say it. Because if you don't, someone else who may not understand what you're saying will take it the wrong way. Because let's face it, we all have moments. We all have friends with schizophrenia. We all have friends with bipolar. And some of us have seen them in their episodes. And when they're in an episode, you have to be careful of what you say. I know someone who read her child the riot act because someone else didn't watch what they say. And I had to look at that person who said what they said and go, do you understand that this person is not mentally well? Well, I said, it doesn't matter. She's not mentally well. You shouldn't have said that. You've got to be careful with your words, because your words are so important, was what my mom used to say. She used to say a lot of stuff. She used to say, it's not what you hear and see, it's what you say and do. It's not what you hear and see, it's what you say and do. And she used to say, there's a poem, but I butchered the poem. She butchered the poem for me. Some say when a word is said, that word begins to die. I say that word just begins to live that day. That is a poem by, I can't remember her name, but I will. She was her favorite poet, and I can't remember because I'm on the spot. But, so that's what happened to me and my mom. And at this point, I really think that it's grooming. Remember, like my grandparents, they didn't raise their kids like that. But I know people who were kind of in the middle of that in my family, and I know other people who are like that. And you have to remember, with the 1950s exceptionalism, it didn't matter what the parent was teaching the child at home, because they went to school and they watched videos. They went to school and they watched this, that, and the other thing. They were segregated. They could be told and believe whatever. And then when they would go home to their parents, where life was normal and friends were black or Asian or whatever, or brown, you didn't believe your parents, right? So like where my mom is raising me like this, I know people raised by the same parents of my mother who did not raise their children like that. because of outside influence from the home. So that's where a lot of this comes from. You know, you had the people that just looked at it like my mom and were like, yeah, I'm not gonna just, yeah, I'm not gonna be an asshole. And then you have other people that really fell for it because they wanted that perfection. They wanted what the movies were showing them. They wanted the Annette Funicello movies. They wanted the they wanted all of that at one time. Because remember in the 80s, we wanted that, right? And in the 90s, at some point, the 90s kids wanted that. So it's grooming, and they're grooming our parents on nostalgia. You know, if my mom had not gotten out of that, she would have gotten worse and worse and worse. Now, my mom passed away in 2005. If she had lived past that and not gotten away from Rush Limbaugh, she would have hated having a black man in office. This woman who didn't show me color in my childhood to the point that, because it was something that my mom and it was a really strange thing that my mom and my aunt did. It wasn't that we didn't see color. We always saw the color. We just recognized the person before the color. So for us, it didn't matter. I don't know if anybody's ever, if that makes any sense. Like, it's like choosing not to use identifiers. It's like, I don't know. I can't explain it. All I know is there was an incident where my cousin and I walked, because I'm brown and she is not. I'm Mexican and white and she's just white. And we walked in the room and we were telling a woman that she looked like Tina Turner, who's very dark Italian, and she lost her mind and told us she wasn't black. We didn't understand what she was talking about. We were so shocked and startled. We walked into the other room and were like, we didn't understand. Because we just saw Tina Turner. We loved What's Love Got to Do. It was a great song. The video was amazing. She had the skirt. Oh God, she looked great. She looked so amazing, you know? It was a real burned Ike. But yeah, you know, it's that. It's that behavior. It's startling children into that realization. And my mom was just never like that, and neither was hers. They have the same parents. The woman we said this to, her husband has the same parents. You know, it's that difference, you know? Are they Trump supporters? No. But do they love Republican rhetoric? Yes. See how that goes? Flying monkeys. So at the end of the day, our parents were groomed. They were groomed from not only being teenagers, but if they chose not to believe that, they were groomed through AM radio, through slow integration, through Rush Limbaugh, to slowly change their views and opinions. My former husband, his mom started saying some stuff because they get emails. Remember, our parents, if they're still alive, they communicate through email. So what do they get? Random, miscellaneous, funny emails that slowly groom them over to the Republican rhetoric. My former husband had to look at his mom and say, yeah, that's not true, and that's rhetoric. And she was like, oh my God, that's awful. And she stopped looking at it. That's how they got our parents. And then because a lot of us were not always raised with great parents, we probably ran, I think a lot of people think, we ran around probably a lot more than what we should have, but I was discussing this with a friend of how I think majority of parents, because we always had a area where we could go, you know. Anyway, either way, that's how they got us. Because you see, they're getting our parents on this email nostalgia, this AM radio nostalgia, this nostalgia of the past, and now they have to get us. They have to get us the feral 50s. They have to get us in our 30s, 40s, and 50s. And either A, we just always went with everything our parents said and were groomed right along with them, or we were already there and we just followed our parents. That's how they got a lot of us. And they get us with 80s nostalgia. Wasn't life better back in the 80s when everything was fluorescent and AIDS was rampant? I know from my mom, who was a nurse who worked on the AIDS, it was just terrible. It was, the hospital was top to bottom. There wasn't, she worked med surg oncology, and I still can't watch stuff about it. Yeah, it was everywhere. It was, there were so many patients, and it was so sad because the nurses had to be their families. And I think too, that's a lot of how we became stronger as a country, because we had all these people who didn't have a family. And so, like, the nurses became families, and they would go home, and they, of course, were always very private, but would talk about their day and how the patients don't have a family. So we would always send love with our family for them. And then through that, they would meet the other people who would come in, their friends who were family. And that's how people changed and connected, so that we could move into the 90s and say, hey, we shouldn't be murdering people because they're gay and beating them in the street. And we shouldn't be murdering people because they're trans, because, boys don't cry, right? No one should be hung up on a fence, and we knew that. And we became stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger, and our parents became our allies. The ones who they couldn't groom became their allies. And that's why in the early aughts, it opened a door, a big door. And Republicans hate it, because we're squeezing their hate out. We wouldn't let them parade up in New Jersey and Connecticut. They fought back then and said, abso-fucking-lutely not. We are not bringing the KKK up into upstate New York to burn crosses on black homes. Abso-fucking-lutely not. We do not do that Nazi rhetoric here. And that's what happened. That's why they're so angry now. This is like a giant pimple ready to burst, because we are squeezing out their hate. So they're trying to groom and gaslight and manipulate as many people as they can. And they're doing it in fear. Now they're at the point of fear. You've gotten the caged animal to go back into the corner of the cage, and there's no way out. And it's either conform to the fact that we refuse to accept this kind of bigotry, racism, hate, xenophobia, all of it. You realize that we are not going to stand up for that. Or you can just crawl in the corner and turn into dust and die, because we don't want it anymore. We don't want it. And it's not just us. It's Canada doesn't want it. Mexico doesn't want it. No one wants it. Europe doesn't want it. England doesn't want it. Japan doesn't want it. China is sick and tired of it. South Korea doesn't want it. Vietnam doesn't want it. Laos doesn't want it. Oh, where else do we have sorry, Ernie, I got loud. Mongolia doesn't want it. Russia sure as shit doesn't want it because they keep electing a certain someone out, but he keeps putting himself back in, right? Sorry, nerds. I'm sorry, Mama's getting vocal cause we don't like hate in this house. We don't. We don't. We don't. We don't like that. We are shelter puppies and we had to take a long time to regulate and get better. We have had trauma, but we have survived. And that's the thing. We have gotten all of this way through all of these years. I mean, has nobody watched the last season of Blackadder? Have you not watched Blackadder? Don't skip around. You've got to go from the beginning to the end. And I'm going to definitely give spoilers now, okay? When you start at the beginning of Blackadder, the person playing Blackadder is a simpleton and a fool. Everybody in that time is a simpleton and a fool and dies. The second season, he's smart now, and he gets smarter every single time. And at the end of every single season, they all die. And the same characters come back season to season until World War I. And something, and I can't quite remember the quote, but basically Rowan Atkins just stands there in a bunker getting ready to die because, you know, this is like lifetimes now. They're always dying and dying and dying and dying and dying, but it's usually poison. It's usually a sword fight. But that's not what it is in World War I. It's the Battle of the Bulge, I believe. And that's tanks. And that's armor. And that's real blood. Big blood. Not just a stab of blood and a gush of blood, but big blood that goes through the soil and makes the soil bloody. And he says something like, 50 years ago, it was just guns, it wasn't tanks. And in that moment, he was realizing how 50 years ago it was so different. Fighting was so different. Warring and taking another country over was so different. And this is different now. This is not the same. This war in World War I is not the same as what they were doing in the 1850s, just taking over Africa or India or any other land that they wanted to. And that was the point of Blackadder. And that's what we 100% have to remember now. And I know that people might be showing up to look at the dogs, but this is important to me. And I don't normally use my platform for my own voice, but I am today because we need to hear this. And people need to, people need to know that your parents were groomed. And see that loud noise? It reminds me of the loud sound of Republicans wanting you not to know. They groomed your parents into hating a black man for 8 years. They groomed your parents into changing fundamentally at the core level who they are. Because, in the beginning of this, I said, you've really got to make it through your 40s. Because, one of the things I've explained at 53 to people that are younger is around 42, you start to have a retrospect that's 20 years difference. They're mowing lawns outside. That's 20 years difference. And with that 20 years difference, you're 42, and all of a sudden you're remembering what happened at 22. And you're remembering that maybe that wasn't so great what I did at 22. And it hits you in a different way because you have a lot more brain knowledge. You have lot more information to really toss around what you did and to understand what you did. I mean, for me at 53, I remember helping a lady in my 30s who she was an elderly lady with a walker, and we were on this, there was this god awful hill, and I had a standard, so I parked my standard on a hill that was pretty much up and down. It was just an insane hill that had a wind tunnel with a river down there. Like, it was part of a parking lot. If you're in Oswego, New York, you'll know exactly where I'm talking about, on West First Street. And I got out of my car, I helped her over, and I was like, thank God I helped her, because she would have fallen and broken a hip. In my 40s, I realized, thank God I helped her, because she would have fallen and rolled down and probably really, really hurt herself. You know? At 53, I realized, oh no, she'd have died. This woman, she could not walk any further than what she was. So if I had not helped her, she would have fallen. She probably either would have rolled down into the river or really, really hurt herself on a car. But either way, she would have died. You know, that is the retrospect. It's understanding that, oh wow, these things are more important. This is what growing is. And this is a lot of times what Republicans want you to forget. They want you to forget that this knowledge, these things, this thinking backwards and realizing what was good that you did and what was bad that you did is growth. It's how you go forward to a better and more positive society, where no matter how much I don't like him, my daughter and his son love to play together, and guess what, 30 years later the two of them are getting married, and now guess what, we're grandparents together and we got to get along. It's called putting your hate aside for humanity. You know what I'm saying? That's what we have to do. And the only way to do that is understanding the grooming that was done to our parents from the time they were children after World War II. And I'm not saying there wasn't other stuff going on before that, because we all know Black Wall Street is a thing, and tipping is rooted in racism. It just is. That's why Black people don't get as many tips, because it's rooted in racism. It just is. Go look it up. So that is my TED Talk for the day. Thank you for joining me while you're watching the dogs. I'm sorry if this was disappointing, but I felt a need to let people know that this is what happened to your parents. This is what happened to mine, and mine completely pulled out of it. As a matter of fact, I think if she had been alive, she probably would have voted for the first time for Obama. She would have been excited. She really would have been. Anyway, take care, everybody, and remember, be good, and behave, and be happy, and be yourself.